Loving two men. Rock Hudson, who gambled with cards and with lives.
You think you know James Stewart, the charming everyman from It's a Wonderful Life? Try again. Bend of the River turned him into something darker. A gunslinger with a noose-scarred neck, a past he couldn't outrun, and a moral compass that spun like a broken wheel. But getting there? Nothing went smooth. The river froze mid-shoot. Rock Hudson nearly drowned. And one actor, he showed up so drunk they had to rewrite entire scenes around his absence. These are 20 weird facts about Bend of the River. And wait until you hear about the bonus, because there's a scene that was cut so violently, even the director said it went too far. Saddle up. This river runs cold and fast. Number 1. Before Bend of the River even had a script, it had a problem. The source material was a novel called Bend of the Snake by Bill Gulick, and Universal Studios bought the rights thinking they'd found their next big frontier epic. They handed it to director Anthony Mann, fresh off Winchester 73, and told him to make magic. Mann read the book once, threw it on his desk, and said it needed a complete overhaul. The novel was darker, more violent, filled with moral ambiguity that studios in 1952 weren't ready to touch. So Mann brought in writer Borden Chase, the same man who'd scripted Winchester 73 and Red River. Together, they gutted the story. They softened edges, changed character motivations, and turned what was essentially a revenge tale into something that could pass censorship. But Chase didn't just rewrite dialogue, he restructured entire plot points, invented new characters, and shifted the ending to something more palatable for audiences who wanted heroes, not haunted men. The result was a script that kept the bones of Gulick's novel, but wore entirely different skin. And when the film finally hit theaters, it wasn't called Bend of the Snake anymore. The studio changed the title to Bend of the River, thinking it sounded softer, more inviting. What they didn't realize was that the river Mann filmed would be anything but gentle.
Yes.
Number 2. James Stewart didn't want to do another Western. After Winchester 73 became a hit, every studio in Hollywood wanted him in boots and a hat. But Stewart was exhausted. He'd spent months on location shoots dealing with dust, heat, and the physical toll of playing tough guys who were nothing like his persona. When Anthony Mann called him about Bend of the River, Stewart's first response was no. He wanted to go back to romantic comedies, back to the charm that made him famous. But Mann didn't give up. He invited Stewart to dinner, brought the script, and laid it out plainly. This wasn't just another cowboy movie. This was a character study. A man running from his past, trying to earn redemption, haunted by violence he couldn't undo. Mann told Stewart, "You're not playing a hero, you're playing a man who wants to be one but doesn't know if he can." That's what changed Stewart's mind. He saw the depth, the darkness, the chance to play someone broken. So he said yes, but on one condition. He wanted to wear a physical reminder of his character's past, something visible. The costume department designed a rope-burn scar around his neck, a mark left by a hanging he'd barely survived. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't in the novel. But Stewart insisted, and Mann agreed because that scar told a story before a single word was spoken. And every time the camera caught it, audiences knew this wasn't the Jimmy Stewart they thought they knew. Number 3. Arthur Kennedy was supposed to be the hero. When he first read the script, his character, Emerson Cole, seemed like the moral center of the story. The charming gambler, the loyal friend, the man who'd stand by Glenn McClintock through thick and thin. Kennedy prepared for that role, studied the lines, built a performance around nobility and humor. And then halfway through filming, Anthony Mann pulled him aside and told him the truth. "You're not the hero, you're the villain. And you have been from the start." Kennedy was stunned. He'd played it all wrong. But Mann said, "No, you played it perfectly, because the audience can't see it coming either." The twist was deliberate. Mann and Borden Chase had designed Emerson Cole to be likable, trustworthy, funny. That way, when he betrayed McClintock in the third act, it would hurt. Not just the character, but the audience. Kennedy had to recalibrate everything. He went back through earlier scenes and added tiny moments of selfishness, small cracks in the facade, a look held too long, a laugh that felt just a bit hollow. He didn't change the dialogue, he changed the intention behind it. And when audiences finally saw Cole's true nature revealed, they felt betrayed because they'd liked him too. That wasn't an accident. That was Kennedy playing two roles at once, hero and snake, and never letting you see which one was real until it was too late.
Cards and with lives.
Number 4. Rock Hudson almost didn't survive the river. He was young, still building his career, and this was one of his first major roles in a big studio western. He played Trey Wilson, a hot-headed young settler with more courage than sense. In one scene, his character had to cross a rushing river on horseback while being shot at. The stunt coordinator assured everyone it was safe. The river wasn't deep, the current wasn't strong, and Hudson was a decent rider. What they didn't account for was the horse. Midway through the take, the animal panicked. It reared, twisted, and threw Hudson straight into the water. The current, which looked calm from the bank, grabbed him instantly and pulled him downstream. Hudson tried to stand, but the rocks were slick and the water was freezing. He went under once, then twice. Crew members on the shore started shouting. One stuntman dove in after him, but the current was faster than anyone expected. For a few seconds, it looked like Rock Hudson was going to drown on a movie set in front of 50 people. Then, somehow, his foot caught on a submerged log. He grabbed it, pulled himself up, and crawled to the bank, gasping and soaked. Anthony Mann called cut, checked if Hudson was okay, and then without missing a beat, told him to go get dried off because they were shooting the scene again in an hour. Hudson later said that moment taught him more about filmmaking than any acting class ever did. If you survive, you keep shooting. Number 5. The river wasn't just dangerous, it was freezing. Bend of the River was filmed on location in Oregon, along the Rogue River and in the Mount Hood area. It was supposed to be summer. The script called for warm weather, pioneers heading west, golden sun on the water. But when the crew arrived, the weather turned. Temperatures dropped, rain poured for days, and the river, fed by snowmelt from the mountains, was so cold that standing in it for more than a few minutes caused painful cramping. But the schedule was tight, and Mann refused to wait. He needed those water scenes, and he needed them now. So the actors waded in, over and over, take after take. James Stewart stood waist-deep in that glacial current, delivering lines while his legs went numb. Rock Hudson, still shaken from nearly drowning, had to do it again. The supporting cast, many of them local hires with no stunt training, were told to just push through it. Some did, others couldn't. One extra collapsed from hypothermia and had to be rushed to a nearby town for medical treatment. The production shut down for half a day, and when they resumed, the studio sent warmer costumes and portable heaters. But Mann kept shooting in the river. He said the cold made the performances real. You can see it on screen. When the actors look uncomfortable, when they're shivering and gritting their teeth, that's not acting. That's survival. And somehow that discomfort became part of the film's raw, unforgiving atmosphere. Number 6. There was an actor who showed up drunk, and it nearly tanked the entire production. His name was Stephen Fetchit, a comedian and character actor who'd been hired to play a small but important role as one of the settlers. He was famous in the 1930s and 40s, but by the early 50s his career was fading, and his personal struggles were getting worse. When he arrived on set for his first day of shooting, it was obvious he'd been drinking. He missed his marks, slurred his lines, and at one point, wandered off set entirely and had to be brought back by a production assistant. Anthony Mann tried to work with him. He gave him water, had him sit down, adjusted the shooting schedule to give him time to sober up, but it didn't work. Fetchit couldn't get through a single take without making a mistake. After 4 hours of trying, Mann made a decision. He pulled the actor aside, thanked him for coming, and told him his scenes were being cut. Not rewritten, cut entirely. The character was simply removed from the script, and the story was adjusted on the fly. Borden Chase rewrote the affected scenes that same night, redistributing the dialogue to other actors. By the next morning, it was as if Stephen Fetchit had never been cast. No one made a big deal about it, no press coverage, no scandal. The production just moved on. But years later, crew members said it was one of the most professionally handled disasters they'd ever seen. Because in one swift move, Mann had saved the schedule, kept morale up, and ensured the film stayed on track. Number 7. Julie Adams was cast as the female lead, but no one told her how tough the shoot would be. She played Laura Bailey, a strong-willed pioneer woman traveling west with her family. Adams had done a few westerns before, but nothing like this. Most of her previous roles involved standing in front of painted backdrops, delivering lines in a controlled studio environment. Bend of the River was different. It was filmed entirely on location. It was filmed entirely on location, in rough terrain, with real weather and no comforts. On her first day, Adams showed up in full costume, ready for a simple dialogue scene. Instead, Mann told her she'd be riding a horse through a rocky canyon while being chased by actors firing blanks. She'd never done anything like it. The Wranglers gave her a quick lesson, about 10 minutes of instruction, and then they were shooting. Adams held on, kept her composure, and made it through the scene. But privately, she was terrified. Over the next few weeks, she had to wade through rivers, climb steep hillsides, and film in rainstorms that left everyone soaked and miserable. There were no trailers, no heating, barely any shelter. The cast changed clothes behind trees and dried off with towels between takes. Adams later said it was the most physically demanding role of her career, but also the most rewarding. Because when she watched the final film, she saw a version of herself she didn't know existed. Not a glamorous starlet, but a woman who looked like she could actually survive the frontier. And that, she said, was worth every bruise and every cold, wet day on that mountain.
Loving two men.
Number 8. Anthony Mann didn't just direct Bend of the River, he fought for it. Universal Studios originally wanted a different director, someone safer, someone who would deliver a straightforward Western without complications. Mann had just come off Winchester 73, which was a success, but the studio saw him as risky. He pushed actors too hard, spent too much time on location, and demanded creative control over final cuts. But Mann had leverage. James Stewart refused to do the film unless Mann directed it. The two had formed a partnership during Winchester 73, and Stewart trusted Mann's vision completely. So the studio caved, but with conditions. Mann could direct, but he had to stay on budget, finish on schedule, and deliver a film that would satisfy the censors. No excessive violence, no moral ambiguity, nothing that would keep it from getting a wide release. Mann agreed to everything, and then he promptly broke half those promises. He went over budget by bringing in expensive camera equipment to capture the Oregon landscapes in vivid detail. He extended the shooting schedule by insisting on multiple takes for key emotional scenes. And as for moral ambiguity, he leaned into it. The final film is darker, more complex than Universal wanted. It's about betrayal, greed, and the cost of redemption. Mann knew he was gambling, but he also knew that if the film succeeded, the studio wouldn't care how he got there. And he was right. Bend of the River became a hit, and Mann earned even more creative freedom for his next projects. But during production, there were moments when it looked like the studio might shut it down entirely. Mann just kept shooting. Number 9. The snow wasn't supposed to be there. Bend of the River was scheduled as a summer shoot with clear skies and warm temperatures. But Oregon had other plans. A freak cold front moved through the region in late spring, dropping temperatures and bringing unexpected snowfall to the higher elevations where they were filming. The crew woke up one morning to find several inches of snow covering the set. Tents were collapsing, equipment was frozen, and the actors were huddled around makeshift fires trying to stay warm. Most directors would have called it shut down production, wait for the weather to clear, and resume when conditions improved. But Anthony Mann saw an opportunity. He looked at the snow-covered landscape and said, "We're shooting this." The script didn't call for snow, but Mann rewrote scenes on the spot to make it work. He turned what was supposed to be a tense confrontation in a forest clearing into a desperate standoff in a frozen wilderness. The snow added a layer of danger, isolation, and beauty that the original script didn't have. James Stewart and Arthur Kennedy performed the scene with visible breath, shivering in their costumes, and the result was one of the most visually striking moments in the film. The snow eventually melted and the crew went back to the original shooting schedule. But that improvised sequence stayed in the movie, and critics later praised it as a highlight. What could have been a disaster became a gift, because Mann refused to let nature ruin his film. He just made nature part of the story instead.
I'll be seeing you, Glenn.
You'll be...
Number 10. Lori Nelson played Margie Bailey, Julie Adams' younger sister, and she almost quit the film after the first week. She was only 20 years old, fresh out of Hollywood, and Bend of the River was one of her first major roles. She'd been promised a glamorous Western with horseback riding and frontier romance. What she got was mud, rain, and freezing river crossings. The breaking point came during a scene where her character had to flee through a forest while being chased by hostile traders. Nelson was supposed to run down a steep hill, stumble, and fall into a patch of brush. The stunt coordinator showed her the path, assured her it was safe, and told her to just go for it. So she did. She ran full speed, hit the hill, and immediately lost her footing. She tumbled, rolled, and crashed into a thicket of thorny bushes. When she finally stopped, her arms and legs were covered in scratches, her dress was torn, and she was bleeding. The crew rushed over, but Nelson waved them off. She was furious. She marched up to Anthony Mann and told him she was done. This wasn't what she signed up for. Mann listened, nodded, and then quietly said, "If you leave now, you'll regret it for the rest of your career." He didn't threaten her, didn't try to guilt her, he just told her the truth. So Nelson stayed. She finished the shoot, bruises and all. And years later, she admitted Mann was right. Bend of the River launched her career and taught her that real filmmaking isn't glamorous. It's grit, pain, and pushing through when everything in you wants to quit. Number 11. The studio wanted a happy ending. The original script had Glenn McClintock riding off alone, scarred and broken, a man who'd won the battle but lost something inside himself. Universal hated it. They said audiences in 1952 didn't pay to see James Stewart walk away defeated. They wanted romance, redemption, a clear victory. Anthony Mann refused at first, but the studio had final cut approval. So Mann and Borden Chase compromised. They kept the darkness but added a final scene where McClintock returns to Laura Bailey, suggesting hope without promising happiness. It's subtle, almost ambiguous. Mann shot it in one take, told Stewart to play it tired, not triumphant. When the studio saw it, they weren't entirely satisfied, but they let it pass. The result is an ending that feels earned, not manufactured. McClintock gets the girl, but you can see the weight he's carrying. He's not the same man who started the journey. And that quiet devastation, hidden behind a forced smile, became one of the most powerful moments in the film. Because sometimes the hero wins, but the cost is written all over his face. Number 12. There was a deleted scene so violent even the crew couldn't watch. It involved Emerson Cole's death. In the theatrical version, Cole falls from a cliff during the final confrontation. And that's it. Quick, clean, over. But Mann's original vision was darker. He filmed an extended sequence where Cole didn't just fall, he was beaten first. McClintock, consumed by rage, delivered blow after blow, driving Cole backward until he finally tumbled over the edge. Then the camera followed him down, showing his body smashing against rocks, breaking apart. It was brutal, raw, and completely out of step with 1952 censorship standards. When the footage was screened for studio executives, they sat in silence. One reportedly walked out. They told Mann to cut it immediately, not trim it, but remove it entirely. Mann argued that it showed the true cost of violence, that McClintock had become the thing he feared. But the studio didn't care. They said it would guarantee an adults-only rating and kill the film's box office. So Mann cut it. The scene was never released, never included in any home video version. Somewhere in a vault, that footage still exists, a reminder of how dark Bend of the River almost became. Number 13. J.C. Flippen played Jeremy Bailey, the tough old wagon train leader, and he did it all with a broken rib. During the second week of filming, Flippen was rehearsing a scene where his character had to dismount quickly from a horse. The horse shifted unexpectedly, and Flippen lost his balance. He fell hard, landed on his side, and immediately knew something was wrong. He couldn't breathe properly, and sharp pain shot through his chest with every movement. The on-set medic examined him and confirmed it: a fractured rib. The medic recommended Flippen take at least 2 weeks off to heal, but Flippen refused. He knew that if he left, the production would have to shut down or recast his role entirely. Neither option was acceptable to him. So he wrapped his torso tightly, took painkillers between scenes, and kept working. You can see it in his performance. There's a stiffness to his movements, a careful way he holds himself. Every time he had to lift something or ride a horse, you could see him wince. But he never complained, never asked for special treatment. Anthony Mann later said Flippen was the toughest man on set, tougher than any of the stuntmen. Number 14. The horses were trained, but not for this. Most Hollywood westerns used ranch horses that knew the drill, calm animals, comfortable with cameras, crowds, and noise. But Bend of the River was shot in remote Oregon wilderness, far from any major training facilities. So the production had to source horses locally, working ranch animals that had never been on a film set before. Some adapted quickly, others didn't. One horse used for a key chase sequence absolutely refused to run on cue. The wranglers tried everything, different riders, different commands, even different terrain. Nothing worked. The horse would walk, trot, but never gallop. Finally, a local rancher suggested they try something unconventional. He brought in a second horse, one known for speed, and had it race past the stubborn one. The competitive instinct kicked in immediately. The stubborn horse took off like a shot, chasing the other one down the trail. Man saw it happen and immediately repositioned cameras to capture the moment. That chase made it into the final film, and it looks incredible, wild, unpredictable, real. Because it was. That horse wasn't following a script. It was just running. Number 15. Howard Hawks visited the set and didn't like what he saw. Hawks had directed Red River, which Borden Chase had also written, and he considered himself the king of westerns. When he heard Mann was filming another chase script in Oregon, Hawks decided to drop by unannounced. He watched quietly for a few hours, observing how Mann worked with actors, how he staged scenes. Then he pulled Mann aside and told him he was doing it wrong. Too slow, too serious, not enough humor. Hawks said westerns needed levity to balance the violence, that audiences wanted entertainment, not philosophy. Mann listened politely, thanked Hawks for the advice, and then completely ignored it. He kept shooting the film exactly as he'd envisioned, dark, morally complex, with minimal comic relief. When Hawks saw the finished film months later, he reportedly admitted he'd been wrong. Bend of the River worked precisely because it didn't follow the Hawks formula. It carved its own path, and that moment became legendary in Hollywood, the day Anthony Mann told Howard Hawks thanks, but no thanks, and made a classic anyway. Number 16. The final confrontation between Stewart and Kennedy wasn't in the original script. The screenplay called for a shootout, quick and decisive, with McClintock gunning down Cole from a distance. But when they arrived at the location, a rocky cliff overlooking the river, Anthony Mann changed his mind. He wanted something more personal, more physical. So he and Borden Chase rewrote the scene on the spot, turning it into a brutal hand-to-hand fight. No guns, just fists and desperation. Stewart and Kennedy rehearsed it quickly, mapping out the choreography with the stunt coordinator. Then they shot it, and it was vicious. You can see real exhaustion in their faces, real sweat, real pain. Stewart later admitted that during one take, Kennedy accidentally landed a punch that split his lip. They kept filming. The blood was real, the intensity was real, and when Cole finally went over that cliff, it felt earned. Because these weren't just two characters fighting, it was two friends destroying each other. And that made it infinitely more devastating. That improvised scene became the emotional climax of the entire film. Number 17. Irving Glassberg was the cinematographer, and he fought Anthony Mann constantly over lighting. Glassberg came from the studio system, where everything was controlled, lit perfectly, and shot on sound stages. But Mann wanted natural light, real shadows, imperfections. They clashed daily. Glassberg would set up elaborate lighting rigs, and Mann would tell him to tear them down and shoot with whatever sunlight they had. Glassberg argued it would look inconsistent, unprofessional, ugly. Mann said that's exactly what he wanted. The tension reached a breaking point during a crucial scene filmed inside a dark trading post. Glassberg had planned extensive interior lighting to ensure every face was visible. Mann walked in, looked at the setup, and ordered half the lights removed. Glassberg threatened to quit. Mann told him to try it his way first, and if it didn't work, they'd do it Glassberg's way. They shot it with minimal lighting, heavy shadows, faces partially obscured. When they watched the dailies, Glassberg went silent. It was beautiful, atmospheric, unlike anything in other westerns. He never argued with Mann about lighting again. And Bend of the River became known for its visual style, that raw, natural look that made everything feel more real. Number 18. There was no rehearsal time. Universal Studios pushed the production to start immediately, worried about losing the Oregon locations to bad weather. So Anthony Mann arrived with a cast that had never worked together, a script that was still being revised, and a shooting schedule that left zero room for preparation. Most directors would panic. Mann thrived. He rehearsed scenes minutes before filming them, sometimes during lighting setups. He'd walk actors through blocking, discuss motivation, make adjustments, and then immediately roll cameras. James Stewart was used to this approach from Winchester 73, but the supporting cast struggled. Arthur Kennedy later said the first week felt like controlled chaos, everyone scrambling to keep up. But something interesting happened. The lack of rehearsal made performances feel spontaneous, alive, unpredictable. Actors responded to each other in real time, making choices that felt genuine rather than practiced. There's a scene where Stewart and Kennedy share a campfire conversation, and you can feel the friendship between them because it was still being discovered as they performed it. The lack of preparation became the film's secret weapon. Everything felt immediate, urgent, real, because the actors were figuring it out as they went. Number 19. Bend of the River had a secret weapon. Second unit director Yakima Canutt. He was a legend in Hollywood, the man who'd pioneered modern stunt work, who'd performed death-defying sequences in hundreds of westerns. Mann hired him specifically to handle the film's action scenes, the chases, fights, and river crossings. Canutt didn't just coordinate stunts, he performed them. At 56 years old, he doubled for actors half his age, throwing himself into dangerous situations without hesitation. During one river scene, Canutt was supposed to demonstrate how a stunt should be done. He leaped from a horse into rushing water, went under, and didn't resurface for several long seconds. The crew started to panic. Then Canutt popped up downstream, laughing, soaking wet, ready to go again. His energy was infectious. Young stunt performers pushed themselves harder because they didn't want to look weak in front of the old master. And Canutt's sequences gave Bend of the River an authenticity that other westerns lacked. When you see someone fall from a horse or tumble down a hillside, it looks real because it was. Canutt made sure of it. His work on the film helped establish the visual language of modern action cinema. Number 20. The film almost had a different title until the very last minute. Throughout production, it was called Bend of the Snake, matching the source novel. Marketing materials were printed, posters designed, promotional campaigns planned. Then 3 weeks before release, Universal panicked. Test audiences in conservative markets reacted poorly to the word snake. They thought it sounded threatening, ominous, too dark for a James Stewart Western. The studio scrambled for alternatives, holding emergency meetings, polling focus groups. Someone suggested Bend of the River, which tested better but felt generic. Mann hated it. He thought it sounded like a geography lesson, not an epic frontier drama. But the studio overruled him. They reprinted everything, redid the marketing, and rushed the new title into theaters. Mann was furious, convinced it would hurt the film. But audiences didn't care. They came for James Stewart, stayed for the story, and never thought twice about the title. Years later, Mann admitted the studio was probably right. Bend of the River was softer, more inviting, and it didn't hurt box office one bit. Sometimes the fight you lose doesn't matter at all. Bonus fact. There's a hat that tells the whole story, and most people never notice it. Throughout Bend of the River, Glenn McClintock wears a battered, weathered cowboy hat. It's not just costume design, it's character development in fabric and leather. At the beginning of the film, the hat sits straight, clean, almost dignified. But as the story progresses and McClintock descends into moral darkness, the hat changes. It gets dirtier, more crooked, brim bent downward. By the final confrontation, it's barely recognizable, stained with river water, dust, and blood. Anthony Mann personally supervised the hat's aging process, instructing the costume department to distress it differently for each act of the film. He wanted physical evidence of McClintock's journey, something subtle that would register subconsciously. When the film wrapped, James Stewart asked if he could keep the hat. Mann said absolutely not, and had it locked in the prop vault. Years later, that hat was put on display at a Western film museum, and film students still study it as an example of how costume can tell story without a single word. In a movie about running from the past, that hat carried every scar, every regret, every mile, and somehow it survived when the man wearing it almost didn't.